The Hollywood bait and switch is when they put super famous actors on the poster and give them the top billing in the credits. But when you actually watch the film, you find out they play a minor character that has no screen time. They can never afford to get these guys to do anything worthwhile, and thus the film always relies on lesser known actors to pick up their slack. Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review new movies and television shows, and I try to release a new review every day from Monday to Friday. Today I'm going over the film Savage Salvation. It's directed by Randall Emmett and written by Adam Taylor Barker and Chris Siverston. It stars Robert De Niro, Willa Fitzgerald, and John Malkovich. Savage Salvation feels like two connected short films rather than one. Both stories have decent moments, but the writing isn't great overall, and the audio mixing is working against the actors every chance it gets. De Niro and Malkovich are barely in the movie, but Fitzgerald knocks her role out of the park. The visuals are subpar, but the soundtrack has a ton of amazing tracks. The movie synopsis for this movie sucks and gives away the plot entirely, so I'll try my hand at writing a better one. The story follows several characters living in rural USA. Shelby John is a junkie living with his addict girlfriend, Ruby Red. After getting engaged, the two of them try to kick their addiction and live a better life. Meanwhile, Sheriff Church and Detective Zeppelin investigate a string of overdoses in the county. Several young people have died in a short time span. When a drug-dealing friend of Shelby John and Ruby Red shows back up in their life and tries to offer them a fix, their plans go off the rails. The dialogue is corny and the story is cliché, highly predictable, and even goes out of its way to spoil some of its own secrets with flash forwards. The first half of the film is an overdramatic love story that drags on too long, and the second half is an action movie that's rushed and fails to set up some of its elements properly. The characters are one-dimensional and flat, and the movie doesn't bother to give any of them the time they need to be real characters. It introduces a lot of different people, but then doesn't use any of them more than once. At times, the writing just doesn't make any sense at all. Like, how does a guy drive around with a corpse on his motorcycle without anyone trying to stop him, or freaking out? What kind of pastor baptizes a guy in need of immediate medical attention? And where did he get those grenades? All that said, there are decent scenes in this movie, and there are ideas in here that were good even if they weren't executed well. For example, I like the juxtaposition between Ruby and John's baptisms, and the way they called back to parts of her story during the second half of the film. It was a nice touch, and had it been fleshed out more, would have made for a succulent and satisfying ending. The cast does what they can, but the dialogue doesn't give them much to work with, and the film doesn't give anyone but Shelby John and Ruby Red the time they need. Willa Fitzgerald takes up a majority of the screen time for the first hour of the film, playing Ruby Red. Fitzgerald has great chemistry with Houston and shows off a surprising range of emotions. She plays Ruby dealing with her addiction in an emotional and powerful way and contrasts it well with the scenes of her and John enjoying their time together. Jack Houston gets the majority of the screen time in the film and does a great job of the action parts, putting on a stoic face and delivering his lines with a good bit of gravitas. He could use a little bit more emotion in his performance, but he was fine for the first half and did well in the second. De Niro and Malkovich are both in here as well, but neither gets more than 5 minutes of screen time and maybe 5 lines of dialogue each. De Niro is the sheriff who wants to help Shelby John, and Malkovich plays the father-in-law of Ruby Red. De Niro tries to put a bit of passion into his role, but he struggles to be heard, and his character does a lot of staring. Malkovich gets one good scene towards the end of the film, but otherwise isn't actually in this movie, even though his character is central to the plot. He makes a good speech in his usual way, and has one highly comical moment that isn't supposed to be funny. The production quality wasn't great for the most part, with the dialogue struggling to be heard for most of the film while competing with a soundtrack that literally never stops playing, and the camera shook for most of the movie. The action sequences look like video game scenes, with sound effects that are actually video game noises. The hero walks through gunfire like it's nothing and mows down enemies just as quickly. The one saving grace from the production side is the soundtrack. There are a number of awesome original tracks in the film that are used to great effect. The song that was playing during Ruby's baptism, or the Amazing Grace cover that plays during the big action climax, are perfect for the moment, and there is a lot of that in this movie. Songs that are vibrant, catchy, and timed perfectly to maximize their effect. There are times when the music does go on too long, or when it competes with the dialogue, but the general quality of the soundtrack is high. Savage Salvation is a sloppy production, without many redeeming qualities. The story has decent moments, but is long and boring at its core. It rushes through the action sequences and doesn't explain itself well. The cast does what they can to save it, but there are a lot of poor creative decisions made over the course of the film, and the production quality just isn't good. The soundtrack does have its moments, but it isn't enough to redeem anything. Give this one a pass, 3 out of 10.